PTSD has a long history that we're not going to get into, and it's evolved over the years, similar to autism, in fact. But PTSD requires a few different things. It requires re-experiencing symptoms, which can be anything from flashbacks, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, physical distress if we don't have that language to put on it, avoidance, so avoiding any kind of reminder of the traumatic experience. So that could be places, people, feelings, thoughts. I know when I get anxious, I start to connect that to how I used to feel. And so I just do everything I can to keep things organized and planned so I don't have those anxious feelings again. Arousal and reactivity symptoms. So that might be a strong startle response, or sleep, irritability or aggression, risky behavior, trouble focusing. And then finally, cognitive or mood symptoms. So trouble remembering the event, feelings of negativity or self-blame that are more than you would expect, loss of interest, isolation, lack of positive emotions. So hopefully you're starting to see already, wait a minute, that could be a characteristic of autism too. Or, if you don't have the right context, those symptoms might be taken differently. Furthermore, the DSM fails us, and you'll gather my feelings about the DSM as we go, but there's not a complex or developmental trauma diagnosis for us to utilize. So we're really stuck with this PTSD diagnosis if we want to be specific about somebody's trauma response, and that really limits us as well. So how has the definition of trauma changed over time? Originally when they first developed this diagnosis, it was thought to be something that only soldiers experience, something that, when men came back from war, they were different, and this was a way for them to articulate that. But now it's becoming more understood as a subjective experience. So if that person interprets the situation to be traumatic, that has a much greater effect than if we objectively come to the situation and say, that's not, why does that bother you? I experience that all the time. So how does that change with autism? And I feel like we could have a really great discussion if everybody was sitting here in my living room with me. But instead, I'll just tell you. PTSD symptoms can be more easily triggered in those with lower intensity experiences, with people with heightened stress reactivity. So if we are more sensitive to what happens around us, our threshold for tolerating experiences is lower. So things that I might be comfortable with, the person next to me might not be comfortable with. And a variety of things might be included in that. So things like bullying, unexpected sounds, misunderstandings, and life transitions may be included. And those are things that the original definition of trauma did not include. It used to just be things like events in which the person felt their life was in danger. Now, we might not always feel that way when we're going through a major transition in our life, but that doesn't mean that experience wasn't traumatic for us. Interestingly, one of the studies that I reviewed for this presentation reflected upon exclusion and being what they called socially trapped as a possible traumatic experience. And that would include things like institutionalization, disenfranchisement, and really societal's limitations on autistic people's ability to reach goals that are, common to most humans. So things like the drive to excel, to reach your goals, to be autonomous, to connect with others. Those things I think sometimes are removed from the opportunities given to people with autism, and unfairly so, in a way that makes them see the world different, experience themselves different, experience the way they interact with other people differently. And then finally, thinking about things like the incongruities between sensory experiences, executive functioning skills, social processing, those things can make the experiences people have feel differently. So if I have a very strong distaste for certain noises and I go into an environment and I feel like I can't escape that noise, that might be very traumatic for me. And it might bring up a lot of symptoms or feelings in me that are aligned with some of these on the screen. Avoidance, I might strongly avoid that situation. I might feel guilty or shame that I had to leave. But that noise didn't bother anybody else in the room. So again, coming back to this idea that some of these interpretations are very subjective.